Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Underdog episode. Today, we have Season 5, Episode 2, Plaster Me Pink. Let's get right into it. Lindsay and Makayla's house is there. No cars in the parking lot, the sun shining in the sky. It cuts to the attic where the chest of cloth is open. All the cloth is present except the pink, which amount is greatly reduced. The sound of the sewing machine can be heard in the background. It cuts to Dylan at the machine, stitching the pink cloth onto the Underdog suit's fabric. It cuts close to the fabric, the two becoming intertwined together. It cuts to him stitching the pink onto many different pieces of the suit. It cuts to the chest again when Dylan stands up in front of it and tosses a small clump of pink cloth back into the chest and on top of the spare. He leans forward and grabs the top of the chest, shutting it lightly. It cuts to a big, pink neon sign, blinking in and out of color in the afternoon sunlight. The sign says, "Come on down," with an arrow pointing down at the roof of the building it stood on. The camera begins to pan down, showing the face of the building, people being shown walking through the frames of the windows. The camera reaches the ground in front of the building. A newspaper rack sits there, being ignored by the countless people walking in and out of the building. It cuts to a new angle where the rack is still visible, but through the shelves, the road can be seen in the background. As the paper shifts slightly in the wind, still held down by rungs, Dylan, in a normal outfit, walks up to the rack, stops, and takes a paper off the top shelf. He continues walking and begins to unfold the paper, reading the front page. As he skims the articles, there's one that's bigger than the rest. "New Vigilante" is marked in huge font covering the entire top of the front. As Dylan scans the article, he sees a blurry picture of himself in the Underdog suit, sitting on a rooftop. A small smile spreads on Dylan's face before he reads the article directly above it. "Reef stands for what's right," Dylan scoffs before turning the paper to its back quietly before turning it back to its front, looking off down the sidewalk. Suddenly, he furrows his eyebrows before turning the paper around to the back again. Dylan squints his eyes at the article plastered directly on the back. What seems to be an alien was spotted at the location of the missing uranium shortly before it was reported missing. Dylan starts to read the rest of the story, seeing the points of the locked driver and strange blue beam. Dylan folds paper in a small square before pushing it into his pocket and walking away from the newspaper rack. It cuts back to the house, inside of Dylan's room. Dylan is seen pushing the box of his suit in it under the table before turning to his wall where a new poster is hung, a New Palm City poster with the entire city in his view. He glances at the poster before turning towards his bed where the alarm clock sits, stating the time as 5:02 p.m. He adjusts the clock before turning to the door and exiting the room. He walks in the hallway where Makayla can be seen sitting on the couch looking at her phone. She hears Dylan and looks up at him, locking her phone. "Hey, Dylan." "Hey." Dylan stops, looking into the arch that appears in the kitchen, seeing Lindsay at the stove cooking something in a tall pot. "Come look at this." Makayla watches as Dylan looks to her before looking at the TV, which he's pointing at. On the TV, the news plays, showing CCTV footage of Underdog capturing someone who stole a woman's purse. They said that this person has been spotted over 5 times. Seems like a star now. Dylan looks over to Makayla, who's looking back at him with only a tad suspicion in her eyes. Wow, that's... Dylan looks back at the TV where Underdog is still being shown, but now it's only showing pictures of him. Really something. I keep seeing this Mayor Reef guy, and... what is this about vigilantes? Makayla takes a deep breath, repositioning herself on the couch to look at Dylan. Recently, this, syndicate has been running the streets, and Reef is the mayor of New Palm City since... Makayla closes her eyes and bites her lip as she tries to think. About a year ago? Dylan nods slowly before footsteps sound from the right as Dylan appears from under the arch. "It's ready." Makayla quickly stands up and walks towards Lindsay as Dylan stands there. "What'd you make again?" Dylan looks back at the TV as it's still talking about Underdog, staring at it intensely as Lindsay and Makayla continue to talk. It cuts to the inside of the kitchen, showing the entire room. Through the arch, Dylan can be seen, still standing there as Makayla and Lindsay sit down in their chairs. Lindsay looks over to Dylan. "Hey, the news isn't going anywhere. Lindsay giggles at her own joke as Dylan looks down at the ground before turning around and walking over to the table, sitting down. He must be fascinated with Underdog, Makayla says, glancing over at Dylan, who's staring blankly at his food, making her playful expression become more serious. Lindsay looks over at Dylan as well, seeing him. Dylan, you're not feeling my pasta? Dylan suddenly blinks rapidly, looking up at Lindsay. No, I just had a long day. Selling more cloth or whatever. Lindsay looks at Makayla, rolling her eyes. Yes, he probably was, Kayla. And, who is Underdog? Dylan looks at Makayla, who he expects to answer. Just another one of those dumbasses in a suit. Dylan furrows his eyebrows. Didn't seem too stupid. I mean, did you see what he was doing? Makayla sighs, setting her fork down and clasping her hands together on the table. Alright, maybe this guy has a better chance because he has mystic powers or whatever, but all these vigilantes are going to get arrested anyway. I think they're cool, Lindsay says quietly, eyeing her food still. Dylan flicks his eyes to Lindsay. Just because they're stupid doesn't mean I don't think they're cool. Dylan smiles softly before looking down at his plate. You know, they actually held a vote a little bit ago. It was if vigilantes should be allowed to roam free as long as they follow the law. But really, they don't follow the law anyway, because they try and do the cop's job. Makayla looks over at Lindsay. Some things are too big for the cops. Both Lindsay and Makayla look over at Dylan, who's becoming increasingly more interested in the conversation. Did the news show the alien sighting at the milling factory? Both women raise an eyebrow and glance at each other and Dylan. It was on the paper. Lindsay laughs slightly, covering her mouth. Dylan, you read the newspaper? Dylan's face becomes a tint of red as Lindsay continues laughing, Makayla even letting a small laugh slip out. I forgot to ask, but what did you guys vote? Lindsay tried to make some deep breaths to subside her laughter before answering. We both voted to keep them around. People like Reef just want to keep all the power to themselves. But he'll keep all that power for who knows how long. Maybe that, Underdog will change Reef's mind. Lindsay shrugs. It's hard to say. Dylan finally grabs his fork and starts to pick at the pasta. It cuts at the milling sign. There's talking filling the area. The camera pans down to show yellow caution tape posted up around the building, along with police cars and officers standing around the open garages. It cuts to a new angle, where the sign is in the background. Underdog lands on the sign, the pink glow fading from his body. He's perched on the sign and overlooking the police officers. It cuts to a shot over Underdog's shoulder, where he runs a hand over his masked face, as he droops his head and suddenly brings it back up before flying away off-screen. It cuts to a part of the desert by the milling factory. Underdog lands on the ground there and opens his left palm. He shakes his left arm violently, but nothing happens. Seriously? Underdog brings up his left arm and looks at it, inspecting the messily put-together costume. He then turns his head to his right arm, shaking it at the same as the left. Again, though, nothing happening. Underdog lowers both of his arms and closes his eyes behind the mask, taking deep breaths. Slowly, his left arm flickers with a spark of fire. But just as his arm starts to spark, it dies down and just ignites the left arm of the suit, starting to spread up the arm. Damn it. Underdog starts to pat his arm rapidly, the fire barely dying down, though, as it starts to burn to the fabric of the suit. He then looks down at his right arm, trying desperately to make something appear onto it. The fire is now on the left shoulder of the suit, the left sleeve black and tattered from the fire. Then a small shard of ice appears in Underdog's right hand. He rubs the fire with the icicle, finally stopping it. Underdog breathes slowly as he shreds off the leftover pieces of the sleeve onto the ground. As the sleeves blow away in the wind, Underdog lets his knees give out, and he falls to the ground onto his knees. He looks at his bare left hand and his suited right hand, sighing. He grasps a fist in both hands and slams them both on the ground, making his left hand spark with fire and his right hand freeze with ice. And both last more than a few seconds. The mask crinkles with a smile as Dylan raises his left leg and gets back onto his feet. He lets go of the fist in his right hand, making the ice thaw and melt some water onto the ground. With the fire still burning on his left hand, he finds a small bush in the sand, hovering the hand near it, lighting it on fire. The fire starts to spread to other small plants in the ground before it cuts back to the milling factory, where the fire starts to become visible in the background. As the officers are chatting, a shadowy figure can be seen leaving the area of the fire. Some of them start to notice the blaze. Fire! Fire! The rest of the people there notice what's happening, dialing their phones for the fire department. Within the commotion, the fire starts to spread into a large area as Underdog sneaks in behind the crowd, entering the facility. Inside, he looks around the dark facility, seeing that no one is inside. He approaches the police tape and steps over it, towards the stacks of barrels in the back. He leans closer and reads a flammable warning, looking at the countless barrels. He bends down to inspect the warnings closer, putting his bare left hand on the label. It shows an angle of Underdog's face. He nods before bending back up and jogging to where he entered. It cuts to a sheet of paper. It has tallies on it, 3 to be exact. In the background, there's a window. Through the window, the side of Lindsay's house can be seen, along with the window of Dylan's room. Soon, Underdog can be seen landing in front of Dylan's window. A hand reaches into frame and writes a new tally onto the sheet of paper. It cuts to Underdog outside the window. He raises his suited right arm and unlocks the window with his powers, the lock glowing pink before opening it. Underdog puts his leg over the window frame and brings his other inside as well. He then turns the window, sticking his head out and looking left and right before closing the window and locking it again. It cuts to the inside of an Underdog takes off the mask and sunglasses, throwing them both onto the ground beside his bed. He rubs the side of his face and then his eyes before beginning to strip off the rest of the Underdog suit. It cuts to the digital clock on Dylan's desk, showing the time to be 1:03 a.m., and on the side of the frame, Dylan is seen kneeling by his bed, pushing the box under it. It focuses on Dylan as he stands up and flops onto his bed, face down. It cuts to the same angle of the bed with the sun shining down through the window. It cuts to a top-down angle where Dylan starts to shuffle awake, opening his eyes and looking around the room. Dylan rubs his eyes before sitting up on the bed and stepping onto the right side of the bed. It cuts to the living room, where Lindsay is sitting on the couch, drinking a cup of coffee. She looks to the right, where Dylan is walking down the hallway, his hair messy. "Good morning." "Yeah, morning." Dylan yawns as Lindsay watches him sit down in the chair parallel to the couch. "Hey, is there like a laptop or something I can use?" Lindsay widens her eyes slightly before responding. "Yeah, there is. Why? You want to catch up on everything you missed?" Yeah. Lindsay gets off the couch, setting her cup down on the coffee table. "Let me go grab it real quick." Dylan flashes a smile at Lindsay before she walks past him and down the hallway. Dylan glances over her shoulder and watches as Lindsay comes out of the room she walked in and back down the hallway, now holding a gray-colored laptop. "Here." Lindsay hands the laptop to Dylan, smiling. The password is Bermuda98. Dylan takes the laptop and looks at Lindsay. "What kind of password is that?" "Me and Makayla went on vacation in Bermuda, and that's where we were engaged." Lindsay lifts up her right hand, showing off the ring on her finger. Dylan sees this, and instead of smiling, he frowns, confusing Lindsay. "Something wrong?" Dylan takes a deep breath, shrugging slightly. "You two just seem so happy." "I had somebody, but I don't know about it anymore." Lindsay sighs, letting her hand with the ring on it fall to her side. "People move on, Dylan. I'm sorry." Dylan shakes his head. "She didn't really move on. I don't know where she is." Lindsay furrows her eyebrows. "Did she move away?" Dylan opens his mouth, going to talk, but not knowing exactly what to say. "I bet there's a way to reach out, wherever she went." "Yeah, maybe. Thanks for the laptop." Lindsay looks at Dylan, a small frown on her lips. "Yeah, well, I gotta go. I'll be back around 4-ish. Dylan nods before Lindsay turns around and picks up her suitcase lying by the door and waving as she exits. The door shuts and it cuts to the black screen of the laptop. Dylan's finger can be seen clicking the power button. The screen boots up and the password enter screen is shown. Dylan's fingers glide across the keyboard as he types in Bermuda98. The screen loads and the home page appears. Dylan double-clicks on the web browser, opening it. It cuts to Dylan's face as he leans back and inches his chin before leaning back up and starting to type. It cuts to the screen again, the search bar being filled with the words, "Major events that happened in 2025. Dylan starts to scroll down, looking at the events listed on the page. A groan can be heard before Dylan starts searching other things. Zara Summers. He clicks the enter button and a profile shows up. He clicks on the profile. On it, Zara's face can be seen, along with some other photos below it. Dylan's face scrunches in confusion. He finds a button that says Message. A chat room opens, but there's no chat box, and only the words, "You must be friends with this user to chat with them." Dylan exits the chat room and clicks on the friend request button, sending one. Dylan goes back up to the search bar, typing in another name, Atlas Jackson. He clicks the enter button, and all that shows up, "Did you mean Atlas Jaxie?" It cuts to Dylan's face, a frown immediately forming onto it. Dylan closes his eyes, rubbing his forehead. It cuts to the screen again, Jake Wilson, on the search bar, before it shows his face on a social media profile. It cuts to Dylan sending another friend request to Jake. It shows the search bar again. This time it has Alan Jackson. A result showing is up. Another profile along with another friend request. It cuts back to Dylan. He leans back on the couch, itching his chin again. He leans up again, typing one last thing. It shows the search bar, the letters appearing slowly. Edward Ezekiel. The first thing that shows up is an obituary, the date from the car crash happened. The cursor quickly drags to the X in the corner before Dylan clicks the power button again, shutting off the laptop. Dylan's face can be seen in the laptop's reflection, a small frown playing on his lips. Dylan reaches up and closes the laptop. It cuts to the oven top, 2 pans sitting on top of the 2 burners. The pan on the right has peppers in it, sizzling, while the left pan has ground beef, cooking. It cuts to the dinner table, Makayla and Dylan sitting there. Dylan has his head resting on his hand while Makayla is watching Dylan and Lindsay as Lindsay cooks. Lindsay says something from the stove. "So, Dylan, did you sell anything today?" Dylan perks up slightly, his eyes darting to Lindsay, while Makayla watches for what he will say. "No, I stayed home. Made some more stuff, though." Lindsay nods, squinting her eyes at the peppers in the pan on the right. "What exactly are you making?" Makayla says skeptically. Dylan looks over at her, a neutral expression on her face. Shirts and such, like clothes in general." Makayla nods. "You should make me a shirt. One that says, 'Tu es un mentor.'" Dylan furrows his eyebrows and Makayla smirks at him. "What does that mean?" "Live long and prosper." Makayla continues smirking as Dylan accepts the translation. Lindsay turns off the 2 tabletops and turns around to the dining table. "All right, it's all done." Both Makayla and Dylan look over at Lindsay. "Come on." It cuts to a metal-plated wall. A diamond inside of a circle symbol can be seen painted onto it. The symbol has the word "fight" marked around the symbol. As the bugs of the night can be heard croaking, a giant blue beam is shot in front of the wall, from top to bottom. Another purple-skinned figure spawns in. This one, though, is taller and bigger, the black armor with purple glows, covering their entire body besides their head and parts of their arms. The figure brings her hand up and punches a hole inside of the symbol painted on the wall. It cuts to the inside of the building. It's a small, square building, the inside lined with an interior layer of bricks. There are big metallic machines around the building, inactive with no workers. The debris from the figure's punch slides deeper into the building, skidding across the floor. There are some barrels lined up to the right of the hole in the wall. The figure steps through the hole and looks around the building. The figure fiddles with the gauntlets on their left wrist before pointing it at a CCTV camera in the top corner of the ceiling. The gauntlet shoots out a small purple laser beam, breaking the camera into small pieces. As the camera's fragments fall to the ground, the figure goes to the barrels by the wall. They bring up their right wrist and the gauntlets on that one. Dismisses a bubbly substance that corrals around the barrels, making the barrels float around inside of the bubble. The figure grasps their right hand lightly, making the barrels crowd closer together, making a compact shape with them. They start to turn around before they stop, looking at something in the distance. It cuts to Underdog standing by the debris on the floor, looking at the broken wall, the symbol still intact, even after the punch. He looks up at the figure, who's gently placing the barrels back onto the ground, the bubble around them disappearing. "Uranium, right? What do you need that for?" The figure glances at part of the debris before picking it up with the right gauntlet's bubble, throwing it at Underdog. Underdog tries to stop the bubble with his powers, but the force sends it back, hitting him against the wall. The figure picks the barrels back up with the bubble gauntlet and starts to walk towards the hole in the wall as Underdog drops the bubble back onto the ground. Underdog brings up both hands and tries to manipulate the barrels inside the bubble, but they don't budge an inch. The figure starts to step outside the hole, the bubble behind them forming around the shape of the hole. Underdog groans and runs towards a wall directly to his right, with the same wall with the hole in it. Underdog breaks the wall, rolling outside into the star-scattered night. The figure looks to the right where Underdog is standing. Underdog brings up both hands and tries to stop the figure with his powers. The barrels, still in the bubble, make a circle around the figure. The figure is glowing pink now as another blue beam shoots down. Underdog tries to pull his hands back, desperately trying to drag the figure out of the beam, to no avail. The figure looks at Underdog, smirking, as them and the barrels get transported elsewhere, the beam disappearing behind them. Underdog falls back, his hands' pink glow fading away. He drops his arms and lets his body fall to the ground, his back lying out flat. Underdog leans his head up and removes the makeshift mask. Dylan places the mask next to his side, sighing. It cuts to Dylan's bedroom window. The night sky still shines over the house. Underdog lands by the window, but isn't going inside yet. He glances around the side of the house, looking at the front door, which is lit by the overhead light. Someone is standing there. A dark-toned girl with curly black hair, bunched up behind her head in a bun. Quickly, Underdog unlocks the window with his powers and opens the window, stepping in and removing the suit in a haste. It cuts to the girl standing in front of the door, the yellow light shining down onto her. It cuts back inside and Dylan walks out of his room, peering into Lindsay and Makayla's room, seeing they're both still sleeping. Dylan goes to the front door and opens it fast, looking at the girl who's smiling for some reason. "Hey, I'm your next door neighbor. Sorry for the late hour, but I thought I'd introduce myself. Name is Marabella." Dylan stares at this girl, squinting his eyes. "Introduce yourself. At whatever time it is?" Marabella laughs, shrugging lightly. "I'm a night owl. I see the same for yourself. By the way, how did you know I was here?" "I never knocked." Dylan squints at Marabella before replying. "I was in the living room, reading a book. I heard you walking." Marabella gives a slow nod, accepting Dylan's answer. "You want some company? I heard reading alone in the dark is a little boring." Marabella sends Dylan a wink, Dylan replying instantly. "I'm good. I think I was actually just about to go to bed. Maybe next time." "All right, no worries," Marabella says before waving and turning around, leaving the doorstep. Dylan shuts the door quietly before heading back to his bedroom slowly. Inside of his room, he sits on the edge of his bed, biting his lip. He brings up his right hand, and it glows pink as the window's lock turns left, locking once again. Dylan lies back on the bed, scooting up so that his legs aren't dangling off the side. He doesn't go under the covers and just lies there, staring at the ceiling as he drifts off to sleep.